I had lain awake the prior night in anticipation of starting the Kora and worried about how I would handle it. Also, though I did not suffer from altitude sickness per se, once I got into bed, I had experienced heart palpitations. Though the guest house we were staying in had barely basic facilities, the heating in the room and the blanket heaters in the bed was enough, and I slept like a baby, sleeping off the tiredness from the first day of the trek and catching up on sleep from the night before. Around 6 a.m. the next day, I could hear the rest of the groups moving around, and finally, around 7 a.m., they left for the day 2 trek. We were the only group who had opted for a 4-day touch Kora. And so we had this day for the attempt to climb and approach Mount Kailash and touch it. My cramps were better. I felt tender, but the pain was controllable. I stepped out to use the facilities and to my shock saw our guide escorting a couple of guys from the other groups to a car. I asked him what the matter was and was told that those guys had decided to go back. They apparently were suffering from altitude sickness and had decided not to continue on the trek. One of them, the prior day, was telling us about completing the Kora and going on to Dharmashala in India and spending a month there. In our group as well, a couple had decided not to continue the trek as one of them could not handle the trek the day before and had opted to use a horse. I did not know what to think. Was I foolish in thinking I could continue when those fitter than me and abler than me were opting out? The original plan was now changed. The Chinese government had denied us permission to climb towards Mount Kailash and attempt to touch it, citing some deaths during the tourist season the year before. It had snowed during the night. Our guide had decided that he would take us to visit the Dapuk Buddhist monastery near the guest house and leave the afternoon free so that we could try and go as close to the Mount Kailash as possible. So we spent the morning visiting the monastery situated in Dapuk. The walk to the monastery took us about 40 minutes. The views of the Mount Kailash from the monastery were unbelievable. It was as if Mount Kailash was so close, though the monastery was further away from the Mount Kailash. We spent about an hour in the monastery and then had some tea and food at a tea house and headed back to the guest house. We decided to ascend the path towards Mount Kailash and started at 3:30 p.m. At the first sign warning us not to go further, we were told that we could proceed to the next set of signs. Our guide had disappeared, citing ill health. He had indicated that we should decide what we wanted to do. Not sure, we went a further 1.5 kilometers up the path. Then we were stopped by the police and asked to turn back. There were a couple of other groups from Russia who were ascending with an intention to touch Mount Kailash as well. We later learned that some of the group members had drugs on them and their guides were rounded up by the police for a discussion. Everyone was asked to turn back. We were happy that we were not detained. Those of us who had bought prayer flags tied them around some rocks and came down to the guest house. Since the sky was clear at 6 p.m. when we returned, we were hoping for a sunset view of Mount Kailash. At 9 p.m., when the sunset was supposed to happen, we did have a hazy view through some clouds, but alas, it was not the golden sunset we had hoped for. Disappointed, we headed to bed, knowing we had a very long and tricky trek of 23 kilometers the next day, wherein we would touched the highest altitude point of the trek.